All right, what's up, football fans? Coach Kevin Smith with you for a Friday episode of the Call Sheet Daily. I'm excited for today's episode because I got a couple of great coaches on the program. Our returning champion, Coach Paul Callahan. Coach Cal's been on the Call Sheet several times. He's going to join us today. But Cal's here along with me so that we can direct questions to our guest of honor here today, Coach Sal Marchese, one of the winningest coaches in Southern New Jersey history, multiple champion in his long career at Delsea High School. Coach, welcome to the program. Appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Kev.
Oh, absolutely. So, Sal, Coach Cal and I, man, we're going to pitch a lot of questions at you, and we really want to sort of get your thoughts on a variety of subjects, and we'll probably break this into a couple of different topics. But the real theme for the show today is building toughness within a football program. How do you do that? The one thing that we know, Coach Cal and I both know from playing against you at Delsea for years, is as good as your teams were from an execution standpoint, they were always exceptionally tough football teams. And so that'll really be our topic of conversation. But Cal, let me start with you real quick. You're a great guest to have on with Sal because you've coached both with and against him. So I'm not trying to just throw a bunch of flattery at Coach Marchese here, but tell me, Cal, what makes him such a great coach, man? Why has he been so successful for so many years here?
Well, first of all, it was a great experience the 1 year I got to spend with Sal at Delsea. And two things I always take away when people ask me about Sal, what's Sal like? I go, not only is he as good a head coach as I've ever been around, but he's as good a position coach as I've ever been around. I remember hearing him coach his halfbacks and his linebackers, and it was as if two coaches were talking to each other. His ability to question kids for understanding and to be able to be on the same wavelength as a great football coach was remarkable to me. So he ran this unbelievable program while at the same time being an unbelievable position coach. It's remarkable. We used to joke at Buna, whoever was the head coach was the worst position coach. Coach Donahue said when he was the head coach, he was worse. Max said when he was, and I said the same, but Sal was as good a head coach as you want to meet and as good as position coach I've ever met. And one of the reasons I wanted to come on today was just to talk to Sal, to pick his brains, to find out and learn from him again.
Well, Coach, man, I wanted to just to give you the opportunity real quick just to talk about how you got where you've been. You were a head coach at Delsea for a long time. You don't have to take us through all of it, but take us through some of your experience there, man. How did you arrive at Delsea, and how many championships did you guys win? You had an incredible run there.
Yeah, I came in when I came into Delsea. I came in after a legend, John Oberg. At the time when I came in, Oberg was the winningest coach in South Jersey history at that time. So I had big shoes to fill, and I knew that coming in. My father thought I was crazy coming in after him. My dad coached with Oberg for all them years, 30-some years. And he told me I was crazy, like let someone else come in. And I just wanted, I played there. My dad coached there for all them years, and I really thought I could do well. So, I knew it was big shoes to fill, but I took the chance, and I'm glad I did. Over the years, I'll always tell everybody, Delsea football, as far as when I've been there, it's not about Sal Marchese. My staff is unbelievable, and I remember Coach Oberg and Coach Donahue. Coach Oberg was my high school coach. Coach Donahue, I coached with at Buna. And they always taught me one thing I always remember from both of them were surround yourself with good people, with good coaches, and they have to be good people. And that's what I tried to do when I've been at Delsea. And most of the guys that have coached under me are just, they're great people. Not only are they great coaches, but they're great people. And I think that has a lot to do with the success that we've had at Delsea. Is just that coaching staff, the continuity, And not only are they great coaches, but they're great people. Yeah.
You know, that's excellent advice. One of the things that I learned at Ocean City, I was at Ocean City 14 years. We didn't get competitive until our coaching staff became a quality coaching staff. Your point about surrounding yourself with quality people is spot on from my experience as well. It's an unbelievable undertaking being a head coach. It's a tremendous amount of responsibility. Not a one-man show by any stretch of the imagination. But obviously, you were the face of the program for a long, long time at Delsey. And as I mentioned at the beginning of the show, anybody who's paid attention to South Jersey football understands how physically and mentally tough your Delsey teams were. So can we start with this, man, Coach? How do you define toughness in a program, right? When you think about players or teams that are mentally and physically tough, how do you define that?
You know, mostly with being mentally, physically tough, especially mentally tough, you know, we try to coach our kids so they can play and focus and execute at a high level when they're under duress, or they're under adversity. Mental toughness, it's easy for people to be tough or assume being tough when things aren't tough. You know what I mean? When the going isn't tough. So, you know, to me, mental toughness is just the ability to lock in, focus under all kind of, you know, adversity, whether you're tired, whether you're hurting, whether, you know, you're in a pressure situation. You got to be able to focus. You can't play with anxiety. You can't play with nerves. You got to just be able to focus and execute, you know, so you can play at a high level. And that's what I think mental toughness is. Now, how you get there, man, like, I think a big thing for us, Coach, how we got there year after year after year is all season is huge. I think the way we run things in the weight room in the off season, there's a lot of coaching and teaching in that weight room, which I think once the kids do stuff right, they're going to gain from that. If they're not doing it right, yeah, like I know a lot of programs and do a lot of activity. We do a lot of coaching in there. So we see a lot of results physically because of all the coaching and the technique that we do in the weight room. And I think that gives the kids a tremendous amount of confidence. Confidence goes a long way in being mentally tough, you know, and hanging in there and being able to focus when things are tough, you know, or when things are hard. So I think the weight room in the off season and the way we ran our strength and conditioning program, we ran it tough. Not only do we teach a lot, so our technique was great and we would see gains for the confidence part, but we kind of put them in adverse situations in the weight room. For a lot of years, like we ran stuff on a clock, and you know, they had to get in so many sets where we were hang cleaning, squatting, whatever we were doing, we were on a clock. So you weren't in there. It wasn't really a bullshit session and music playing all over the place. It was a lot of teaching, instructing, and we were on the clock and making these kids, by the time they left that hour and a half period, that they were hurting. You know, they were hurting. And I think that had a lot to do with the way we played once the season rolled around. I think it really did. And then practice is another, you know, that's a whole nother deal.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to ask you, Sal. I haven't been with you that year. I saw that attention to detail when you were coaching your position. How much did your practice and the way you practice at Delsey determine your team's toughness? How much of that practice was about toughness?
I think a lot of it, like a lot of it was, and I even made mistakes when I was a younger coach, but I think we made mistakes as a staff and we kind of prospered by them. But like, I'll give you an example. When we would go into camp, we would practice. We would stay at Delphi. All the kids would stay. The coaches would stay. They would cook meals for them, stay overnight, all that. We practiced, if you can believe it, 3 hours in the morning, an hour and a half in the afternoon, and 3 hours at night. And so we were going 7 hours. And one thing that we used to do in between sessions, I was talking about it with Coach Flame the other day, because we were talking about how things changed and, how kids changed. And I said, remember when we used to put that roster up on the board of camp? And every day we went out there, we tried to break them kids mentally. We tried to break them. And we would come in and not doing stuff out of the ordinary. We would just try to up-tempo practice. We hit like crazy. And this was a lot before the rules changed. And we had a really up-tempo. We practiced for so long. And we would come in and just like X people off the board and say, we broke this kid. We broke Johnny today. We broke him. It got into the point where we were breaking coaches, Cal, too. I would say, well, Maxwell broke today, and this one broke. So we had a good time with it. The kids might not have had a good time. But even the kids did after, because it became a tradition, and the kids would go out to practice. This is in preseason, and would say, Coach, I'm not breaking today. There's no way. We're not breaking in camp. And because the kids kind of knew that's what the coaches wanted to do. And the whole time we were practicing, we were teaching technique, but we were going to go hard, and we up-tempoed them kids. And that was all part of a plan, because our philosophy was the more that we got kids to invest in something, to invest and go hard, and man, the games would be easy. Like they'll be so glad to get the games. But there's nothing they're going to see in a game that they didn't see in practice or 2 times already. So that was kind of our philosophy. It kind of sounds barbaric in a way, but that's what we've done. And the coaches bought into that. And this was probably, I'm talking first 15 years, 15 years until everything changed. But that's kind of the way we went at it in preseason. And I know a lot of people say over the years, like you guys probably, well, Delphi gets off the slow starts. Yeah, no shit, because we killed them early in camp. You know what I mean? Like, we didn't recover from camp is what it came down to, the first, second, third game. Like, I can't tell you how many times we were 1-2, and then we ended up winning a state championship, sectional championship at the end of the year. With a lot. I think only 1 year we were ever undefeated, and we won 11, 12, sectional championships. So in the beginning, it did hurt us. Like, I kind of learned from that. Once the rules came down and you couldn't hit and you couldn't go all them hours, doubles and triples and all that stuff, then it became tougher, to do that kind of stuff. But it was funny because once them rules changed, then our record kind of got better early, but we weren't as tough, but I think it's all relative. I don't think anybody's as tough as they used to be.
I was gonna ask you about that, Coach. You hear a lot of people say things like, kids today are soft, and I don't, I see evidence both ways. I see evidence where kids aren't asked to do things that are hard in the way that they used to be. Sometimes I don't know if it's that the kids are soft. I just think that maybe the demands that we have on them have changed. So how have you managed to keep the toughness within your program, knowing that both the rules and regulations have changed and that, the expectations of young people have changed as well?
I tell our kids the last few years, I'm probably saying maybe the last 8-10 years has probably changed. I always tell them, like you guys, some people would, they bitch and complain about going 2-a-days. We were going 2-a-days, and we were going maybe 4 hours, like 2 hours in the morning, 2 hours, come back at night, which I guess you're only allowed 3, but we kind of fudged it a little bit and went a little bit more. But I always tell them kids, like, you're no different than them kids were 15 years ago. Like, they weren't aliens. They didn't come down from Mars. You're the same human beings. They just had a different mindset. They came, they had tougher, their parents were tougher on them. The main thing, and everything everyone did, their teachers were tougher on them. You know, their grandparents were tougher on them. And what it comes down to me, is it's society is soft. The kids aren't soft. You know what I mean? Kids learn to be soft, or learn to be softer than the other kids, but that's because of society. It's, you know, you guys know what it's all about. I mean, you guys coach. It's just you can't, like the hours. Like I said, we went triples. Well, man, triples 3, 1.5, and 3. And now, like my last couple few years, we went maybe once stretching and everything got over an hour and a half in the morning, hour and a half at night, because rules got softer. NJA, SEA, and you know, they came down with all them rules about that, and hitting, and you couldn't hit as much. And you know, so I think just life in general, society in general, you know, kids have gotten soft. As far as us, we try to really hammer them in the weight room still, and we try to really hold them accountable, and really stress discipline, being on time, doing the little things right, and we harp on them and we hold them accountable. That's more, you know. Again, we practice tough. We still practice 3 hours. You know, when I was retiring, we were still out there for 3 hours for one practice, but you couldn't hit as much, and so we just tried to really hone in on the little things, like being on time, stretching the right way, everyone doing everything the right way, being accountable and being disciplined. And I think that helped a lot with toughness also.
Hearing you talk, Sal, I'm reminded of Vic Fangio when his opening press conference with the Eagles. They said, you know, our players as tough as they used to be. He goes, it's not the players who lack the toughness; it's the people around them that are not holding them accountable and are not as demanding on them. And it seems like you're saying pretty much the same thing as Fangio.
Absolutely, like that's what I really believe. Kids are kids. Like, you know, like even in the old days, like in the older days in the 90s and early 2000s, like, why were them kids tough? They weren't tough because we were a inner city school, because we're rural. They didn't work on the farms like they did in the 70s and the 60s. Now them kids, they were probably tough when they came in, because they were working on farms all day long, especially around here. And they knew work ethic, and they were working. Some of them were getting off the farm. Kids that played with me were getting off the farm, coming to practice, leaving practice, getting on the farm again. So I think them kids were tougher. These kids today, like you said, Cal, they're the same type of kids that I've had in the last 30 years, but I think society is different. You know what I mean? So, you know, the kids they don't have to go through the ringer like they used to.
It's interesting though. You haven't really changed your core approach over all this time. Would you say that, well, but yes, the rules have changed. You've had to alter the way you do things, but your fundamental mindset on how you develop a football player is still essentially the same. In your experience, have you noticed that if you set the bar at a certain level, that the kids will meet it? Do you think that while it may take more than it once did, are you still finding that young people today will rise up and meet the expectations that you set for them?
I think definitely they will, but you're going to have less. You know, in my opinion, the last probably 10 years, we've had less kids that are going to, you know, be nails tough out there and not give in and not break in certain situations. Do we have enough to win? Yeah, absolutely. But I think it's all relative, because your opponents you're playing, they're the same way. So, you know, our mindset's the same. If we can develop more accountability, more discipline, more mental toughness than our opponents, you know, we just have to beat opponents now we didn't have to worry about 20 years ago, so I think, our philosophy is still the same, Kev. We're just we try to grind and work these kids hard and make them accountable. But our teams have gotten smaller, over the years because of that. I think we're, 10 through 12, we've had 38 kids. By the end of the year, maybe 35 kids on a team for Delsey's program. It's not too many, where we used to have, 45, 50, so it's kind of dwindled down a little bit.
Hearing you talk about the farm, Sal, I was reminded of your in-laws, the Chipolalios, who played first years ago. And we said, we used to do that 3-day practice, all that in camp. And they said, oh, we loved it when camp started, because that meant we weren't working on the farm anymore. And I remember asking them one day, I said, you guys have off on the 4th of July? And they said, no, you know what my father says, 4th of August, 4th of July, what's the difference? So those guys liked when football started because it was easier, as hard as football is, than it was to work on the farm.
Yeah, absolutely.
I had a question. Go ahead. I had a question for you, Sal. When we played you in 2017 in the playoffs, I remember talking to our defensive guys and saying, be ready. Their offensive line is going to be these physical, tough kids. I just coached there about 5 years previously. I said, be ready. These guys are going to come off the ball, and they're going to hit you, and they're going to grind after you, and they're going to stay after you for 4 quarters because they're going to try to break you. And that's how I always thought Delsey beat teams that were so-called more talented, because I thought you grind it and you broke teams. And that was my experience when I worked with you. How much of your team's toughness is tied into your offensive line, your blocking? I know you have a Hall of Fame offensive line coach in Ron Flame. He's as good as it gets. How important is that to your philosophy, and how important is that to your team's toughness?
Offensive line is at Delsey and the whole team knows this. We're going to live and die by our offensive line. I was an offensive line coach at one time too. My father was an offensive line coach, so I have that kind of mindset. I coached with Coach Donahue and coached the line there for 3 or 4 years, and our kids know at Delsey we're going to live and die or win and lose by our offensive line, and we make that known right every year, and it starts in the off season, and we tell the kids, like, we challenge them. Are you going to be able to live up to last year's line? Are you going to be able to live up to that? I mean, these kids know who the 2017 line was. They know who the 2020 line was. That's how much our line is made just the key factor of our team. And our kids know that. Our running backs know that. Our quarterbacks know that. Like, they're the heart and soul of our team. And, I think that has a big effect on the toughness of the team, because our running backs now, they want to be tough. Our quarterbacks want to be tough. Everybody wants to be tough because we make, again, linemen don't get a lot of praise, and they're not going to score touchdowns, and they're not going to, get the headlines. But on our practice field and in our program and in our culture, everybody knows it's all about our line. If we have a soft line, we don't win. We don't win at Delsey. And you know what? A couple years that we didn't win, we didn't have that kind of toughness up front that that we had in previous years.
Well, yeah, man, you adopt a lineman mentality up and down the roster. No doubt you're going to be a tough football team. Coach, we're gonna hit you up with some more questions here, but we wanted to turn the conversation towards more towards the scheme, because you guys run an interesting scheme at Delsey that not a lot of high schools are running. So that's actually going to be part 2 of our show. So we're going to wrap it here, part 1, and then we'll come back with Coach Cal and Coach Marchese to talk a little bit about the scheme they're running at Delsey, what makes it so interesting and difficult to defend. So stick around for that, everybody. I'm going to play us out here. This has been our Friday episode of the Call Sheet Daily, and we'll be back with Coach Cal and Coach Marchese for part 2 on Monday. So have a great weekend, everybody. All right. For some reason, man, there's Cal. When you and I talk, there's like an echo. Yeah. I don't know if you hear it or not, but I think the guy who produces this, I think I can get him to get most of that out. But it's totally fine when Sal talks. So yeah. Sal, we're just going to let you talk as much as possible. So hey, are you cool for a little bit if we come back and just sort of talk a little bit about how you guys are running your offense and
absolutely.
Okay, cool. Awesome, man. Appreciate it. So we won't go as long. Maybe we'll go 15, 18 minutes. Cal, you want to start? You jump in and ask him because obviously you're a little more familiar with some of the changes that they've made.
That's good, Kev. I'll happily talk. I'll start.
Okay, cool. All right, excellent. All right, I'm gonna play us back in with the intro music. All right. Okay. Here we go. It's gonna start up again. All right, football fans, welcome to a Monday episode of the Call Sheet Daily. I'm your host, Kevin Smith, and today we got part 2 of our conversation with longtime Delsea Regional head coach Sal Marchese, future Hall of Fame coach here in Southern New Jersey. Won more championships than he's got fingers to put all the rings on at Delsea. And also joining us, Coach Paul Callahan, longtime guest here on the Call Sheet. Coach Cal, Coach Marchese, welcome back to the show. Appreciate you guys both being on.
Thanks, Kev.
Thank you.
Yeah, so today we talked on Friday about building toughness in a program. And today we're going to turn the conversation really to the scheme that Coach Marchese ran at Delsea for a long time. Interesting scheme. Coach Cal, I'm going to let you pick it up and we'll jump in with that.
Sal, I wanted to talk to you about, I know your background at Delsea was wing T. You guys were under Obi when you played there and your father coached there all those years and had all that success. You were a big power wing T football team. And then when you got the job in the 90s, you were a young guy and you were a real power wing T team up until really your first couple sectional titles. And then I guess it was around 2005, 2006, you became an option-based wing T team. My question is, why the change and how difficult was that change?
I think we changed, to tell you the truth. I was in a gym lifting one day, and I saw Mark Deal in there. And Mark was, he coached at a million different places in South Jersey, Gateway and Clearview, a bunch of different places. But he asked me, do you guys ever run any option like Delaware? Because Delaware back in the day used to run wing T, but University of Delaware, but they ran veer with it, a lot of veer and a little bit of outside veer option. And they would run down option. They ran a lot of option. And I said, nah, I never got into that, Coach. I think if you're a wing T team, you have to be a wing T team, and he kind of talked me out of it. He was like, well, you have great fullbacks and you can go from a double wing. And we ran a lot of double wing anyway. So he was like, the timing would be there. You have to mess with your splits. And we went over it. And he said, just put in one play. Just put in midline. So I was like, all right, we'll put him with midline. And this is leading up to practice to preseason. And we put in midline and I liked it. Like, I liked it because, again, you weren't blocking one guy. You were reading them. So that gives you an advantage. It gives you numbers. And as an offensive coach, you're always looking for numbers. Like, how can we how can we have numbers to run this better? You know, whether it's your formations or what. Usually it is your formations or your motions or whatever you're trying to get numbers. Well, if you're reading somebody and not blocking them, you have numbers. So we started running just midline in 2006, and it really started changing us a little bit. People were, especially that affected a lot of the D tackles because we were reading them and not down blocking them, not on blocking them, not zone blocking them. So we were reading them a lot. That would kind of throw them off a little bit. And it kind of made, then we started running midline option, triple, and regular triple with it. And now that was a whole nother deal. We started running outside veer too, with the wing T. And that was a whole nother animal. We started doing that because the reason I did was just because somebody told me to try it, and I respected him as a coach. He told me to try it, and I liked it. You know, it made sense to me. And then I started thinking more like, man, like, what if we can run triple with this? I don't know if we can do it, this and that, but we started doing it, and we just started adding. We like one year we ran veer, and then the next year we put in midline option, and it just took off. And I would never run anything else because, man, like wing T, it just drives defensive crazy. You're reading tackles, you're reading ends. Now your defensive people have to say, well, who's on the fullback, who's on the quarterback, who's on the pitch back. And now all of a sudden you come down, you're running power down their throat, and they're thinking, option. So it really keeps the defense off balance. It, to us too, what it did for us is it took away a lot of blitzing and where people would blitz all over the place and bring people off the corner against us. You know how in wing T they would fire to that motion, and well, you can't do that if somebody has to play the pitch. So it really balanced defenses up for us. It stopped them from like bringing everybody all the time like people were in a wing T. And to be honest with you, I loved our play action game off of that because, again, your secondary was involved a lot of times in who had quarterback, who had pitch. And now they're so concerned with that. We were hitting them with long shots. Like, well, I think one year, half of our completions were touchdowns because we just had people screaming up for the pitch or filling the alley for the quarterback, and we would throw play action over the top. So that's basically why we went into it. It was kind of like somebody suggested it. And I knew Delaware did back in the day, but I really didn't think that we could do that. But, we got together as a staff and we always talk. And I remember asking Coach Flame because he's a guy, he has a lot to worry about up there up front. And he was like, Sal, we practiced so long. Yeah, we could fit it in. He goes, I have an hour and 10 minutes of individual time every day. Absolutely, we can fit it in. So we just started doing that, and it really took us to another level. Like, I think when we have a good offensive team, we don't punt. I think we punt 4 times one year. There's a year we punted 5 times. The only time we really is when we stop ourselves with penalties or something like that. So are we more option based? Like Cal, you said, I think we're probably 50-50 now. You know what I mean? Because we kept adding options. Like I said, we went midline, then we went veer, then we went midline option, which is a great play because we run it out of misdirection, with that wing back. You get a lot of people wing T that they go with motion, or you get a lot of option. They go with motion. They rotate their secondary. Well, that midline option, we're running wind motion and then coming back out the back door. So that's been a great play for us. And then a lot of people trying to stop midline against us, Cal and Kevin. So to stop midline, like Camden over the years and some other, they put a big 380-pound kids in A gap, and then they brought their backer up really tight, and they would play their kid that you're usually reading your 3 tech. They're playing him, and usually we would read him. Well, he would just sit there because you have to double the heck out of that 1 tech, and the kid's 400 pounds. You're not getting movement 380 pounds, and a lot of them teams, the Creeks, the Willingboroughs, the Wilsons, the Cannons, they had them kind of kids, and then they put a big stud linebacker 2 yards off the ball, saying, "Well, go ahead, guard, block them and see what kind of movement you get." And then the quarterback had to give it because the D tackle was just sitting there, So when teams started playing us like that was their answer to midline, and it's hard to run veer to that side because you have a 3 tech. You got to double it. You could, but it's not a great play. So we started thinking about it. We were like, well, if they're going to play the backer that tight, we got to run outside veer. So then we bring an outside veer to the mix, and now teams were like, whoa, like now that backer's up 2 yards off the ball. He can't get to outside veer. That double team is riding him, running right into him. So then we evolved with outside veer that really made us tough. So,
Sal, do you mind if I ask you an outside veer question?
Yeah.
Did you change the fullback's alignment at all, or his footwork? Because when you run outside veer and split backs, the mesh point is, the outside hip of the tackles, right there to tackle. What did you do with your fullback so you could run outside veer and get that good mesh point?
Our outside veer is a lot like our steps are a lot like 82, 88 down in option. It's just a slight jab step, a slight lateral step, about 6-inch step, and then we're hitting the inside leg of the tackle.
Okay,
is our aiming point. So that's because we're going to get a double there, whether it's a lot of times, if we run to the tight side, it'll be really, depending on what kind of defense we get. But if we would go against the 50s, like we went this year, we got 50s when I came back out with Coach Volpe, we got some 50s. And we were running it to the tight end side and the split end side. Split end side, you just widen that wing, and the end goes out with them if they're in a regular 50. If they're running an over, then we're going to run midline, So, but if they run that base 50, we're going to widen the end. And really, the way we teach it is we take the guard, the tackle, and the tight end. It's like a triple team. We're getting a ton of movement on that tackle, and then the guard will come off inside. The tight end will chip if the backer tries to come over the top. And we'll do the same thing with the wing. The wing, if we run to the split side, I love it to the split side because we just reduce the split a little bit of our split end, and we crack the safety. So now the pitch guy, if we get a pull on the end, the pitch guy's that corner that's way out there. So that there's a big alley for the quarterback. You don't have to pitch a ball. You know what I mean? So I like running to the split side if you can. But that's the way we block it.
Sal, speaking of, you mentioned a quarterback, Sal. Your system, people think, when they think quarterback, they immediately think, oh, well, throwing the football, obviously. But your system is very quarterback-centric, despite the fact that you guys don't throw the ball a lot. So what do you need out of your quarterback? What traits or characteristics does that kid have to execute your offense well?
Yeah, our quarterback's got to be our best player. Our quarterback, fullback, and center. Like, to run what we're running, they got to be your best 3 players on offense because everything comes from down the middle. And as a quarterback, you want a point guard is what you want. You know what I mean? And hopefully that point guard has some athletic ability. You know what I mean? So, because you want a good decision maker. That's what you want there. If you have a kid that, I always say it sometimes, Cal, I get enamored with option because I love the fact, like, me and Flame, I call it tricking. We're tricking the defense. It's not powerful enough for what we do. Like, sometimes we'll come out, and if we beat a team and we run all option, I'll tell the offensive line, we had to trick them, we had to finesse them. run an option just to break their stones a little bit. But I think that quarterback position, Kevin, he's got to be a point guard, and hopefully he has some athletic ability. If he can throw a little bit, we don't throw much. So
and when you do throw, Sal, your guys are wide open.
They're wide open. Yeah, they're wide open. So if we can have a quarterback that can throw the ball out in the flat and can throw the ball on a post, that's basically, what we want. The big thing about the option game too is sometimes, like I was saying, when I get enamored with that option, sometimes it's not the best thing. So I got to kind of, and Flame does a good job of this with me. Sometimes he'll just say, "Hey, Sal, just run belly. We just run power." Because sometimes I'm looking, what option play should I run? When sometimes it's not a good thing, because if your quarterback has a bad day, decision making, you're in trouble. Because we check everything at the line of scrimmage when we're running option, and he has all the decisions. So he looks at the defense. We're making a check right or left, and then he's got a fullback key, pitch key. So he's got a lot on his plate. And sometimes I've had quarterbacks that had bad days, and we didn't really have a great offensive output that day. And I was like, we ran too much option, put it too much on the kid. You know what I mean? Because it can be tough. It can be tough. But as far as a quarterback, like you said, you got to have it all. It's got to be one of your best 3 players on offense.
You've got some great running backs too. I remember when we played you in that playoff game in 2017, you had the kid who went to Harvard. But they all seem to have that downhill one cut and go style about them. I mean, do you develop backs like that, or do you just think that's kind of the nature of the type of kids that you get? These just downhill physical runners. Is that a product of your system, or is that more a product of your community and the types of kids you're getting?
I think it's a product of one thing. Like I said, like everybody wants to be like we want to be like linemen. We want to have that culture. We want to be tough. I think that's one thing that lends to that is the culture, and these kids want to be tough. And I think number 2 is we don't do drills like I've been a running back coach for long time, and once after preseason, Kevin, we don't do any drills like footwork drills, like going through ropes and all that stuff. We block for 20 minutes straight. Our kids just block. Our wing backs, they just block, because in the wing tee and in option, you have a crucial block. So we spend 20 minutes of individual time on blocking our different blocks, our arc blocks, our seal blocks. So I think some of that lends to our kids. We don't work on cutting and jump cutting and all that stuff. Hey, get the ball north and south and be tough as nails. And if we have kids that have a little wiggle, we've had like with Aiden, and they had that natural wiggle, that's good for us. But again, we just want to get north and south, and we don't work on that, footwork, cutting, jump cutting, all that stuff. We just block,
I said it before on the first episode about when I coached with you. The thing that I found, one of the things I found most remarkable was your coaching of the position, the wing backs or the linebackers, and questioning those kids for understanding. There was never a doubt when you would have a conversation that the kid knew what was expected of him or what his assignment was. Could you talk a little bit about that questioning for understanding and your philosophy as a position coach as well?
Yeah, as a position coach, again, I'm very, very detailed. I'm an offensive line like kind of guy, and I coach the running backs the same way. And I think to play fast, you have to understand what you're doing. Number 1, or you can't play fast. And number 2, you got to be confident. So if you're confident and you know what you're doing and you're confident, you can play fast. And that's is our philosophy with our kids. So we drill the heck out of technique. And I tell our kids, I don't care if you're 150 pounds or you're 200 pounds, you got to win the game of leverage. You have to be able to block a 220-pound linebacker. Doesn't matter if you're 150 pounds. You got to sell out for your teammates. And these are the things technically you have to do. And our kids really get into that technical part of things because, again, I think it's just the culture, Cal. Like, everyone wants to be – we hold the offensive line in such high regard and the running game in such high regard. And our kids know, like, we have two wing backs that usually play. We're usually in a double wing situation. And I tell our backs right from the beginning of the year, I don't care if you can run the ball. That doesn't matter. You shouldn't be a running back if you can't run the ball. I want to see who can block. I want to see who can do the little things right and block and fake and do all the things necessary, all right, to distort that defense. That's what I want to see. Running's a gimme. Running's a gimme. It really doesn't matter. We're going to score the ball, and it depends on how close we are, who scores, and all that stuff. We don't care about that. It's just kind of like we want to be the people. I think a lot of our running backs want to be the guy that has the great block on the goal line, not the back that carries it in. We kind of have that philosophy. Now we've had some kids that love the touchdown part of it, but that's basically what we try to beat across.
Well, Coach, man, this has been fascinating. I've learned a lot. You have a mentality that was probably difficult to instill in young men, but man, if you can get them to buy in, then the success speaks for itself. It's such a team first, selfless attitude. And obviously the results have been spectacular. So, congratulations, man, on a hell of a run. I know you got a lot more coaching in you, but what you did at Delsey is pretty special.
I appreciate it. And like I said before in the last episode, like, I've been blessed to have one of the best coaching staffs, in South Jersey. Them guys work. Cal knows them all. The guys that have been with me for most of my career, and they're just workers, and not just during the season. Like it's all season long. That relationships you have with the kids, making sure the kids are doing the right things in the classroom, the right things outside in the hallways, the right thing during lunch, the right thing, So them guys, like I said, it's they're the reason that our staff and the people that are around me were around me and still are around me in the last 30 some years. That's a reason for our success.
It's amazing to me too, Kev, thinking about it. Your father was on Coach Oberg's staff for about 30 years, right? Roberts and those guys were all with Coach Oberg all that time. And now here you are, a successor, the second coach in Delsey history. And you had Tommy Maxwell, Ron Flame, the Browses, all those guys with you for that long period of time, similar to Obi's staff.
It is. It's like it's really eerie when you look at the similar things, because not only there has been two staffs like that staff, they were all together, like you said, for 30 years. But all them guys coached everything at Delsey. Like John Roberts was a wrestling coach. My dad was a wrestling coach. John Roberts was the track coach. They kind of coached everything just like this group does. Coach Flame is a track coach, great track coach, state champion track coach for years. Tom was a baseball coach, and now he's a head wrestling coach, just won a state championship this year. Bryles does basketball. He's done softball for years. It's kind of the same thing. That group of people coach everything around here. It's kind of eerie, like it is. But I think, like, even Coach Oberg told me way back then when he coached, like, surround yourself with good people. And I was fortunate enough to have great administration where we could go out and get a Tom Maxwell and a Ron Flame. And like, athletics was important here. Athletics, I had some superintendents and some boards that were like, man, athletics, we need to have great athletics at Delsey. And they're the ones, they're the reason why the Maxwells and the Browls and people like that are at Delsey, because of they knew what kind of importance athletics had to this school district. And that was a big help too.
Fantastic, Coach, man. I really appreciate your time. This was awesome. Coach Cal, as always, great catching up with you as well, man. And thanks for really Coach Cal who brought Coach Marchese to the show. So I'm greatly appreciative of him as well. And once again, Coach, man, thank you so much. I really learned a lot.
Thanks for having me. Anytime.
Absolutely. All right, man. So that wraps our time with Coach Sal Marchese. This has been our Monday episode of the Call Sheet Daily. Catch me again tomorrow, 10 a.m. New shows all week long. Until then, man, everybody have a great week. Take care.